complexity plus man hours equals near misses. This is a fundamental reality of the construction projects that you build. And for every incident that occurs on a project, there are 8 near misses. These are just some of the realities regarding safety that I discussed today with my guest, Terry Dussault, the founder of Yellowknife Consulting Services and an expert in the development and implementation of safety programs in construction companies. Today, we talk about what a safety culture actually is, the difference between a safety program and a safety culture, why it's important to investigate incidences, and how to develop a near-miss reporting program that your employees can buy into so that you reduce the number of incidences in your company. Feel free to share this conversation with other people who you think would benefit. I know you're going to get some tremendous insights into how to improve your safety program in your company. It's definitely something we want to focus on. So enjoy my conversation with Terry.
This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership.
Terry, welcome to Construction Genius.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today.
Yeah, I'm delighted to have you as well. And the reason why is because the topic of conversation today is safety. And I know that that is something that all of my listeners are intensely interested in. Give us a little bit of your background, please.
Yeah, sure, Eric. I got started in safety back in the 1990s, and it just kind of evolved. It was something that I didn't really think that I was going to be involved in for very long when I first started, but it seemed like with these different companies that I used to work for, that somehow I always got nominated, I guess you could say, to be part of the safety program. And I think it was back in about, 2002, I was doing a lot of work for a major oil company. And they, as part of their contract, basically said that, look, if you want this juicy contract, you're going to have to go through our safety training school. And it was really at that point, I think, that I got involved in safety at a very high level. Before that, it was just, some basic meetings and safety committees and things like that. But it wasn't until I really started working for the oil companies doing environmental work that I got really involved and started to learn some of the things that they were pushing. And I would say they were at the tip of the spear as far as safety goes. And so the requirements and the regulatory requirements and things were very strict, and they took safety very seriously. So that's pretty much how I got into safety, and it just really evolved from there.
So I know that every construction company is conscious about safety to one degree or another, and yet almost every construction company is not flawless when it comes to being safe on every project that they build. There's incidents, there's accidents. So let me begin by asking you, what do you mean by a safety culture?
Well, I think you said a word that I'd like to talk about. You said flawless. And the goal really, I think, for any company should be to at least try and shoot for flawless execution, even if it's not fully possible to get there. That should really be the goal. And in doing that, what you want to really try and do is when you're talking about safety culture, you want to try and get your teams involved in safety and really understand why it's important. And it needs to be kind of organic. So, in other words, building a safety culture requires that leadership be involved. And you can't just say, hey, listen, we want you to be safe. You have to go out and actively be involved as leaders. And when the workers and crews see that senior management is also taking it serious and that they're coming out into the field to talk about safety alone, just by itself, they start to really grasp the importance of the safety program, and that will actually help build the culture. But if you're trying to dictate to people that, look, we expect you to be safe, go out and be safe, but you're not providing them the tools and the resources to learn how to work safely, and that you're not willing as a leader to go out on your own and have meaningful conversations in the field about safety, workers know that you really don't care. And so it makes it very hard to sell your safety program or build the culture. So when you have a culture, that means everybody's actively caring and they're looking out for one another. And
Okay, so
that's a very powerful thing.
okay, so there's two things there that I heard about the culture. The first one is that it starts at the top with the leaders coming out into the field, and I'm assuming you're saying the executive leaders of the field coming out into the field and talking about safety and really providing that example of care and concern for safety in and of itself, apart from productivity or anything like that. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, that's one aspect. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then there's that aspect of supporting one another in the field. So I'd like you to speak to the superintendents and the foremen, and give them your key insights into how they can balance the safety discussions and the productivity discussions, and how they should be going about that.
Yeah, that's actually a great question or topic. So that becomes kind of a challenging, especially when you have a lot of different personality types when you have foremans and superintendents, and a lot of them are very good at what they do at their jobs, and depending on their background with safety, maybe from other companies that they've worked at or just their background in general. Um, that really kind of comes into play because I'll give you an example. I did a site inspection a couple weeks back for a client. They hired a new foreman, and this kid, he's a carpenter. That's his trade, and they brought him in because they were familiar with him. He worked with them at another company, I suppose. And the other carpenters that were working underneath him, I noticed some of the crewmen were like running across the job site, and one guy happened to be holding a sawzall. And so I asked the main superintendent, why is that guy running across the site? And I knew that he was new. And basically, to boil it down, what it was is that the new carpenter foreman is a guy that likes to push production. And he says he believes in safety, but at the same time, the guys that are working under him, they're afraid of him because of the way he manages. And he barks at them and he has them on edge and so on and so forth, so much that these guys feel the need to be rushing around the job site. And the problem with it was that the site terrain is such that there was a lot of rocks in the soil.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, number one, they shouldn't be running across the job site. Number two, this is going to turn into an incident. And so what I like to look at is, where's the time pressure coming from?
Mm.
Is this something that management's driving down, like, hey, look, we need to finish this project, we're behind schedule, and then the foremen are driving that message, and you're going to end up with an incident. So you have to, you got to really kind of look at what do you have going on the field, and when you recognize some of these things, figure out a solution that works for everybody.
Okay, let's pursue that a little bit then. Where's the time pressure coming from? So let's assume in this case the time pressure is coming from the foreman, who's just, maybe he's a competitive guy, or he doesn't like to go slow. That's just his nature. So it's not necessarily, he doesn't care. It's just who he is. And so then I'm the owner of the company, or an executive in the company. Perhaps I'm a general superintendent or something like that. And I come out into the field and I talk to the foreman. And how do I communicate with this person why his perception of the importance of productivity is not necessarily what we're looking for in terms of creating this time pressure? And how do I communicate to him that even if we did go slightly faster, the risk that we are bringing upon ourselves of incidents and accidents as a result of that is just not worth it?
Yeah, I think the trick to that really is just a lot of coaching at first, because sometimes people bring that with them, or if that's just part of their personality. Sometimes as an employer, you have to look at it and say, we're trying to build a safety culture, but at the same time, if this guy is so production driven that he's keeping people on edge, and there's the potential for incidents to occur as a result of his behavior, management has to, kind of go back to the drawing board and say, is it really worth having this guy on our team? And it doesn't matter if that foreman or super has been there for 10 years. If you want to have a good safety culture, you have to have these kinds of conversations. And, you have to also say, is this the right person for the right seat? And when you're building an organization, or you're building a company, and you start bringing on, you're getting new projects, and some of them are big. I remember way back in the day, we got a project, or a contract for $20 million, and we had to ramp up. And so you start to have these different kinds of challenges, and sometimes you might have a person that's been there for a long time from the start of the company, and they're a loyal employee, but the position outgrows their capability.
Mm-hmm.
So now all of a sudden you have a person that is not the right person for the right seat.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have to find somebody who has a better mindset for safety, or
Mm-hmm.
make some readjustments within your organization so that your safety culture is not compromised. And in some cases, you have to let people go. And
Okay.
that's the unfortunate part. But I sometimes say, like, when I see this type of behavior where people are rushing around, that sometimes working slow is working fast, because if somebody gets hurt on that job site, you have an OSHA investigation or something like that, it shuts production down altogether. So, you know, you have to really be able to balance that as a superintendent.
Okay. So let me ask you this then. I come onto the job site. Maybe I'm having a meeting with him, you know, at my truck or in the job site trailer, and I'm saying, okay, listen, I understand that you want to drive production, and we appreciate that. But let me give you a perspective on production. Here are the three areas where you must slow down. you must tell your guys to go slow. But here are 3 areas where you can really give attention to that production. So what I'm saying is that instead of the dude running across the job site, have everybody walk. But once they get to the place where they're doing the installation, perhaps with this particular task, because of the safety parameters around it, this is an area where you can really emphasize, okay, guys, when you're in this position and when you're doing this task, you can definitely focus on being as productive as possible.
I think you're bringing up a good point. You have to really look at it like, yeah, where are some areas that are maybe more high risk, right? In those areas, you have to make sure that, there's no wiggle room for safety, because the severity of an incident could be high, or the likelihood could be high. And if something does happen, the severity could be high. Whereas if you have a set of tasks that the crew is going to do that are maybe not so complex, then yeah, they can kind of make up the speed on those particular tasks. So the trick really, I think, is to just, for the foreman or superintendent to kind of know how to balance that. And sometimes they just need a little bit of coaching. And then there's other times where the tasks are just so complex and time consuming that the only way to do them is to do them kind of slow and meticulously.
Yep.
And I was at a different site recently where almost a similar thing happened with one of my clients, where they were doing a lot of industrial piping and they were kind of rushing to meet production. And these are large diameter pipes, 15-inch, there's a lot of valves, and in the installation process, it has to be precise. And if you don't do it right, you're going to end up doing rework.
Right.
And a couple of weeks later, I came back to the project, and for this client, I only do weekly site inspections. I noticed that they were working on the same set of pipes again. And so I started asking, just out of curiosity, like what the status was and what they were doing. And it turned out they were doing rework. They had to do 3 days of rework because they were rushing the job.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about how there's a nice dovetail between safety and quality.
It all ties together, Eric. That's why I say balance is key. I really believe planning is everything. If you have really rock solid planning, that'll really help a lot. And sometimes really what happens is a lot of construction companies and contractors are forced to use the manpower that they have
Yeah.
or they have available, but it might not be their top players. So when you have that happen, then sometimes you think that you're making your production schedules and things like that, but you end up paying the price in some other way, either quality, safety, or some other thing.
So what is the difference between a safety program and a safety culture?
I would say a safety program is, you might have all the key things to have the program, like all the pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the culture is really like the synergy of what's going on in that company when it comes to safety. What's the feel when you have people that are working out on jobs, or you have management? What's the general feel within the company? Does everybody really believe in safety? Are they talking about it, or are they expecting that to be somebody else's department and they have no involvement in it? So I think when it's organic and everybody's involved, they're sharing what the findings are of their investigations. They're having monthly safety meetings, like all hands safety meetings. If they're doing safety stand downs after an incident occurs, at a company-wide safety stand-down, and they're sharing the findings or the lessons learned about what those incidents were, so that they can prevent that from happening again. So it's really like practicing what you preach. That's what really will help build the culture. And then you have to have some teeth in your safety program. So I believe that it's very important to coach people as much as you can, keep it positive, and remind them, why it's important to work safe. And, if you have employees or guys out working on the job site and they're not taking it serious, you have to deal with it somehow. And doing a thorough incident investigation is key as far as that goes. And then if people knowingly violate safety policies, there has to be some teeth in the program. Something has to happen. So
Okay.
coaching will take you pretty far, coaching and training.
Yeah.
And then for the rogue workers that don't want to play nice in the sandbox, then you have to figure out a way to handle that. And unfortunately, that's the nature of work. But there also has to be really good synergy between the safety person and human resources. It's kind of like, they're working together. And so there has to be a good connection there.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. How can safety people conduct themselves in their interactions with the field so that they maximize the likelihood of the field listening to them and implementing what they're doing? Because, the reason I'm asking this is, a lot of times I'll talk to a safety person and they're the bad cop. And then sometimes safety does attract people who are sort of super militant and, they're correct in what they're saying, but the way they say it, it puts the field off and they're like, screw that guy. He comes onto the job site. I'm not looking forward to talking to him. So speak to the safety professionals out there about how they should be showing up on the job site to maximize the impact of their message with the men and women in the field.
Yeah, that's really important because sometimes your delivery is everything. And I think that you get farther with sugar than you do with vinegar. When you're talking to your foreman and your superintendents and people about safety, you have to really find a person that's tried and true and has a really good delivery. And you could have all the safety credentials in the world, but that doesn't mean you're going to be a successful safety officer within an organization. If you don't know how to speak to your team and your employees, and if you think you're going to be a dictator, you're going to isolate yourself, and you're going to send the wrong message, basically. And then it's hard to recover from that. Actually,
yeah. What's the advantage of developing a safety person who's had experience in the field as opposed to bringing in someone who has all the certificates, if you know what I'm saying?
I like promoting from within the field because there's just something different about a safety person who has the experience. They automatically, in most cases, get the respect of the workers because they've done that work and they've put their hands on it, and they know what it feels like to have to go out into the field and do a job when it's 105 degrees outside and there's a lot of humidity, and they understand what that feels like. And so they might pick up on things that a safety officer with just a lot of schooling would miss. And so that I think is actually really important.
So that's really excellent. What is the difference, or actually, why is it important to investigate incidents and then to have a near miss reporting program?
I think what I'll do here is, if you don't mind, I'll start with near miss reporting.
Yeah, let's do that.
Ideally, by capturing a near miss, I look at it like it's a golden nugget, or it's an opportunity to fix something. before a real incident occurs.
Okay, so let me just interrupt you there, Terry.
Yeah,
How can because it's like I just think about our kids, right? If they do something where they could have broken the window, but they didn't, they don't come running and say, "Hey, Pop, I threw the baseball at the window and the baseball didn't shatter the window for some reason." They're just like, "Phew, that didn't happen." So how do I, as a leader, establish, hey, listen, guys, this is why we need to hear about every near miss that occurs.
yeah, I think that's a great point, because you're actually saying to people, we want you it's kind of funny, but we want you to tell on yourself, right?
Right.
You know, when something happens in the field and there's a close call, even if nobody got hurt, we want to know about it.
Yeah.
And why is it important to report it? Well, it's because usually in a lot of incidents, when you investigate an incident, and here's the real reason: for every incident that happens, there's some statistics that they say there's usually 8 or 9 near misses that occurred before that incident happened that were similar in nature. So if you start to capture near misses, then what you can do is you say, look, uh, we have a problem. And this actually, I'll give you a specific example here. Going out doing site inspections for a client, trying to get them to report near misses. They already report them. But what I was trying to tell my client is, I don't think you're getting enough near misses for the amount of man hours that are being spent on these projects and the complexity of the projects. I know there's more near misses happening. So we started this little mini campaign to get people to report more near misses. And I said, I'll help coach the superintendents and foremen to capture more. Literally 2 days later, I go out to a project site. This was, I think it was last week. They're doing some excavating work, and there's a dump truck, and the dump truck got stuck on a mound of dirt and kind of high-sided itself. And it turned out that the secondary air tank for the brakes, there's a little pressure relief valve or something, and that thing snapped off. The driver didn't know about it, and he proceeded to go to another area of the site to dump his load of soil on a stockpile. And he couldn't manage the truck properly or lift the bed, or he was having some kind of issue. And I was getting ready to leave the job site, and I see him jump out of his truck, and he runs around it and goes underneath the truck, and he's inspecting it. The truck is parked on a slope, and it's got a full load of soil. We're talking a dump truck here, so there's a lot of weight. And I stopped, and I went and intervened, and I said, hey, what are you doing? You can't be under there. We started talking about it and captured that, as a near miss incident. Turns out the driver was inexperienced, brand new on the job, and he wasn't being spotted properly in the work area initially where he was being loaded. And so that's why he high-sided the truck, and the damage occurred. So when you start to really investigate it, let's say that person, the truck, he was under the truck and the truck rolled over him and something bad happened. OSHA comes out and they do an investigation. They're going to start asking a lot of whys. And when you really get down to in the incident investigation, if I was doing it, I would say, what we need to do is figure out all the causal factors for why it happened. And if you don't really ask enough whys, you might not really get to the full root cause or the correct root cause.
Yeah.
Which could actually lead your corrective actions in the wrong direction. So by doing the near miss reporting, even if let's say the company says, we don't have time for that, it takes too much energy, and I've had clients say that before, we don't want to do all this near miss reporting, it'll take too long, we don't have the resources for it. So there's ways to set up what I call a near miss flash report, where you could basically enter it on your phone. Enter the information on your phone. It literally takes like 2 minutes. And now all your superintendents and your foremen are capable of entering this information in a fraction, not even that much time. And at least you're capturing what is happening on site. So when you do have your monthly safety meetings, or you're doing safety committee meetings or that kind of thing, you have some information that's relevant to your company that you can talk about.
So is
And
that? Let me ask you: is that an app on the phone, a specific app, or what is that?
yeah, it's a software program. I've used it for about 7 years. It's a company that I've worked with out of Canada. And basically, you can put your whole safety program, all your documents, and everything in one place. And the best part about it really is
What's the
that
name of that company, please?
it's Site Docs.
Site Docs.
Yes, Site Docs, and they're in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah, great company, and you can transform your program really, really quickly, and it's super effective.
Okay,
So
so that's
that's
sitedocs.com. There'll be a link in the show notes so that
yeah,
people can check that out.
yeah,
Hey, this is Eric. I hope you're enjoying my conversation with Terry. And quick break to let you know about my book, Construction Genius. It's interesting, Terry was talking about how leadership is what drives a safety culture. So it starts with you, the owner of your construction company, and then it goes throughout the organization. If you're committed to safety, then your people will be committed to safety also. And with that in mind, leadership is such a key that this book will help you to improve your leadership, because in it you will find effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing advice. You can get the book on Amazon. It's $20 for the paperback. And this is what I'll encourage you to do. Purchase 10 or more copies for you and your leadership team. Then contact me, Eric at constructiongenius.com. And I will come in over Zoom with your leadership team and do a Q&A about the book and its contents, and a bonus training in addition to that. We'll have a 30 to 60 minute session. I would normally charge $2,500 for that session. I will do it for you for free if you purchase 10 or more copies of Construction Genius. So that's a pretty good deal, right? So you invest $200 or so, you get a $2,500 return. Sounds like a good deal. So go out to Amazon and get yourself copies of the book. Contact me on my website, or Eric at constructiongenius.com, and we'll get that session, Q&A and leadership training session established and set up with your team. Okay, let's get back to the conversation with Terry.
And so going back to the near miss thing, it's like you just have to understand that, there's a relationship between near misses and incidents. And when you understand that those near misses are just opportunities to make corrections in your safety program, or have even just having discussions, you're promoting your safety culture.
Yep.
So you want to catch things before they happen. And, any way you can prevent an incident, if it's just by having more discussions in the field, or capturing near misses and investigating them, because there's no difference in how you would investigate a near miss in an incident. The investigation can literally be the same. The only difference between the two things is luck. So if a guy on the job site, you go there, and every time you go there, you see him jumping off the backhoe, and he's not using 3 points of contact, you can go talk to the guy and say, hey, if you continue to jump off that backhoe, what do you think's going to happen?
Yeah.
You fall off. You might fall off 3 times, nothing happens, but on the 4th time, you break a leg or twist an ankle, and now you have a workers' comp claim, or you have some kind of a bodily injury incident you have to deal with. Those bodily injuries and incidents, that chips away at your company's EMR rating.
Yes.
And the idea here is to prevent injuries property damage, environmental exceedances, security incidents, and most importantly this is where every employee needs to understand the importance of preserving the company's EMR.
Yep.
That's your experience modification rating, and that's part of your workers' comp stuff.
Yep.
And the best way to describe it, or the best way I describe that, is it's kind of like your company's safety credit rating.
Mm-hmm.
And if the company's safety or their EMR rating goes too high, it can actually prevent them from bidding on big projects, which prevents the ability for new opportunity. And in some cases, when the EMR is too high, if you're not allowed to bid on certain projects, it gives your competitor a way in.
So let me take you back a little bit. There's a little formula that I heard, and it's complexity plus man hours equals near misses.
Yeah.
In your mind, do you have some sort of ratio or specific number that you communicate to people? Like, listen, you've got this type of complex project. These are the number of man hours on the complex project you have, and therefore these are the number of near misses you should be expecting.
Yeah, that's there are some numbers out there, and I don't remember all of them now off the top of my head. But as from a proactive approach, what I try and do is, let's say for every 350 man hours that you have on a job site, or 400, you should have one management interaction on the job.
Okay.
Like doing an observation or going out and having some kind of discussion specifically about safety.
Okay.
I've seen where a lot of managers will go out and they just talk about the scope of work and production and stuff, but they don't really talk safety. So that's something.
Why that specific number? Why that number?
Those are some proven statistics or some numbers that were generated from some of the oil companies that I did some work for over the years, and they spent a lot of time, like, really diving into that, and they put a lot of money in the research, and they said that if you can do that, then that will be a sufficient amount of engagements, we'll call it, to really start help promoting your safety culture. And sometimes the managers, you just go out and start talking safety, and you could ask, hey, has there been any near misses? And sometimes when you ask those questions, people will tell you that, oh yeah, we've actually, something happened yesterday.
Is there any wisdom in tying bonuses or incentives of some kind to the reporting of near misses?
Yeah, so there's some different schools of thought on that. So
yeah.
Because I remember way back in the day, I worked at a company that was actually founded by John Wayne, and one of the incentives was, if nobody gets hurt at the end of the month, everybody gets a certain amount of points. And there's this book, and you're allowed to pick some kind of a gift out of the book. You could also let your points ride throughout the end of the year, and then at the very end of the year, the prize is much bigger. Like you get to pick out of the book. And I remember there was a camera, and the problem with having a program like that is, if somebody gets hurt, they're going to be less likely to report it, because everybody wants the camera. So they don't want, if Joe cuts his finger, he's going to be less likely to go report it, because the peer pressure of everybody telling him, oh man, you messed up, now we don't get our camera.
Yep.
So, but as far as reporting near misses, I think that there absolutely should be some kind of incentives for that. And those are discussions that need to really happen internally with the company management. But if you really want to promote the near misses, I think that that's a good way of doing it, is, tying it to some kind of incentive. And then actually, it's really important that the employees know the difference between a hazard and a near miss.
What is the difference between a hazard and a near miss?
Well, a hazard is just, something on, let's say, the job site, like a project I have going on right now for a client. There's a lot of rattlesnakes.
Little rascals.
So yeah, a lot of so those are biohazards. We knew it going in. There's also poisonous plants and a lot of other stuff because it's a remote area. So those are hazards, but a near miss would be more like an encounter. So let's say you got out of your work truck, or the work truck was parked by a certain area, and you go to get in it, and there's a snake behind the tire, and you didn't see it. Well, that's kind of different. That you could call that a near miss. The fact that there's snakes in the area, well, those are hazards, right?
Right.
So sometimes a hazard could be reported as a near miss, but it really doesn't matter as long as people are being proactive.
Yeah.
You can flush that out and kind of train the workers about, really all the nuances of what a near miss is. But it's important to capture them, really.
So you're having lunch. Let's say you're having lunch with the CEO of a construction company, and he's saying, Terry, I care about safety. I want my guys and gals to care about safety. Give me 2 or 3 things that I can do in the next 90 days to improve the safety of my organization. What advice would you give to the CEO of the construction company?
Well, I think the first thing you would need to do is really kind of get your key leadership involved, or people from the field that can help really identify where you have the most risk. And what I mean by that is, where is the potential highest for somebody to get hurt that we may not be fully aware of? Where is the potential for us to have some kind of other loss that could have a financial impact, like, for example, a fine from a regulatory agency?
Yeah.
And I had this client where we were trying to encourage them to do more near miss reporting. They had a project, a lead abatement cleanup project, and they had 25 crews, and they were doing a lot of trucking of hazardous soil. They had the hazardous soil. There was 2 different classifications: low levels of lead and high levels of lead. Both waste streams were routed to different disposal facilities. There was a mix-up, and that mix-up ended up costing the client $750,000 to clean up the mess, because the high-level lead ended up in the low-level lead waste disposal facility, which triggered a regulatory problem and a lot of attorneys on calls, and it really cost a lot of money. The other thing that it did is it increased their insurance premiums by $400,000 a year. So look for the highest potential for something to happen, or the highest risk areas.
Yes.
And focus on those first, those areas.
Yeah.
Try and understand, what's happening in those areas. And I would say, get your employees involved in trying to get some near misses reported, and then use the information to make improvements, and then share those improvements with the employees, because it's important. A lot of times the employees are seeing things, but you have to encourage them to speak up. And sometimes they're afraid to speak up.
Of course.
There's people that are they're quiet, and that's not their nature or their personality, but they're sitting on a lot of information that could be useful.
Yeah.
So I think that would be some of the main things.
So as you're trying to understand what's happening, and this will be my last question to you,
Uh-huh.
How should I frame that conversation? I'm looking to get deeper understanding. What are some key questions I can ask or approaches I can use to get as much information as possible?
From your employees.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that would depend on logistics, like depending on how big the company is and where
Hmm.
everybody is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it might make sense to do an all hands meeting, and you might have to do a Zoom meeting and get people on the call and get everybody together, and really just say, look, this is the message. We're looking for areas of vulnerability within the company, and we need your help. We can't see everything when we're running a company and managing. The company's growing, it's getting bigger or whatever, and we need your involvement and your help in identifying some areas where we can improve or enhance our operations so that we don't end up with costly accidents. And if you involve people, and then give them some examples maybe of what you're looking for, and you'd be surprised, what people will come up with.
How
And
often, let me just ask you this other question. How often should I, as the CEO of my construction company, be visiting a job site and be having some sort of safety conversation with the men and women in the field?
I would say as often as possible, but I know the reality of that is sometimes, it's not there. So I would say if you could do it, the longest it should be is quarterly.
Okay.
But I would say if you could get out on a monthly basis, depending on, I don't know how big these, some of the
Of
companies
course, no.
are.
I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
talking any size company. Just give us a general idea.
Yeah, I would say if monthly would be optimum.
Yeah.
We have the president of one company decided to go out. He bought a really high end barbecue, and he goes out on a monthly basis and actually will barbecue for the guys on certain projects. He can't get to every project, but you'd be surprised how far that goes.
How large is
And
that company that you were talking about?
350 employees.
Okay. And
They
so, what kind
they
of
did
revenue? What kind of revenue are they doing?
120 million a year or
Okay, so
more.
just make that point real quick. So if you have a company that's around $100 million a year, you too could buy a barbecue, go out to a job site, cook for the guys, and give a talk on safety. Is that what you're saying, Terry?
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
Yep,
and it goes a long way.
that's
Goes a
tremendous.
long way. It's money well spent. So I hear the feedback from the guys in the field, so I know that that really helps a lot.
Yep, yep. So tell us a little bit more, Terry, about what you do, your company, and how you help construction companies.
Well, it depends on each company. Everybody has different needs, and depending on the size of the company, some of them might be struggling with, like the problems with their experience modification rating, like I was saying earlier. Maybe it's
Yep,
spiked, and now
okay,
they're having to deal with how are we going to respond to that so that we don't lose our competitive edge, or it might be training. Sometimes I'll go out and do coaching or training on job sites, even for companies if they're experiencing some problems. I can help with incident investigations. In some cases, I had a client that they had a worker got his pinky cut off, and they didn't have time. They had the safety personnel, but they didn't have time to investigate it. So I ended up doing the investigation for them and helping determine all the root causes and solutions. If you want to transform your safety program to digital, I work with site docs to help do the implementation process so that people can go digital. And that system is probably, as far as dollars and cents goes, one of the best investments a company can make.
excellent. And how can people get a
And
hold of you, Terry?
they can, my website is www.yellowknifesafety.com.
That's great.
And
Awesome.
yeah, most of the things that we offer are all there.
Hmm.
There's a way to get a hold of me through there. And if one of your listeners just wants to have a conversation about safety, I don't care. It doesn't matter where it goes. Maybe they just have a question, and I'm willing to talk to anybody. My wife doesn't like it when my phone's ringing all night, but to me, I don't mind doing it. I like what I do. I care about people, and I want to help companies improve their safety programs. So even if you use my services or you don't, I'm willing to have a conversation about safety.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we're going to put the links in the show notes to yellowknifesafety.com, and we'll also have SiteDocs links in the show notes. Terry, really appreciate your time. I noticed you're down in Huntington Beach. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so give the audience a quick recommendation. Southern California, I'm in Huntington Beach. What's the one restaurant I need to hit up?
There's a really nice restaurant down here in a place called Pacific City. It's right across the street from the beach. It's kind of a newer development. The place is called Ole, O-L-E. And there's a really nice restaurant in there, and there's another one in there called Blue Gold, a little more higher end place, but both are great. So
Blue Gold and Ole.
Yep.
Excellent. We're going to have links in the show notes to those restaurants. Ole is a Mexican place, and then Blue Gold, that sounds like a sort of California cuisine. Is that right?
Yeah. It's really good. They have all kinds of steaks and whatnot. And also, one last thing I was going to say is, if your listeners are interested in doing SiteDocs, they can contact me, or the contact person at SiteDocs that you should talk to is a guy. His name's Richard. There's only one Richard. So, and if you tell him that you heard about SiteDocs through this podcast and Yellowknife Safety, he will probably be willing to give you a deal. So,
awesome.
Really, really nice folks over there. Awesome.
That's great. That's great. Well, wonderful. I really appreciate you taking the time today, Terry, and thanks for joining us on Construction Genius. Yeah,
thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Terry. Before you bounce off, make sure you check out his website, yellowknifesafety.com. He also mentioned SiteDocs as a potential solution to some of those near-miss reporting issues and other safety reporting issues that you might have. And that company is SiteDocs.com. Thanks again for listening to Construction Genius. Give us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts. Share this conversation with other people who you think could benefit from listening. And we'll catch you on the next episode.